The Haunted Mansion was thought of and conceptualized since 1953, and it took almost 16 years for it to materialize and haunt guests. The long and exhausting period from a walk-through Main Street attraction to the doom buggy-powered mansion we know today had to go through many Imagineers, revisions, and technology advancements to exist. Today we will examine 4 versions of haunted mansions that were never made here in Stories from the Mansion. We are close to our 999 quota, so subscribe and join us now, and also share this video with fellow Mansionites. Now let's get inside the mansion, shall we? I made a very detailed video on the ride through each room and the narration of the ride based on scripts from Disney Imagineering. Click on the thumbnail to watch it. The Gore house was placed at Frontierland. This house was about Priscilla, Captain Gore's bride, finding out a secret chest in the attic where she saw objects connecting him to a life of piracy. In the ride, when Gore finds out, he throws her body out the window and into a well. He then takes her body out and walls it at the cellar. By means of voodoo and witchcraft, undead Priscilla sends ghosts and creatures to visit Gore to turn him crazy. In the end, guests would end up in the attic, where Priscilla would have the last laugh and show us Gore's body hanging from the rafters after being unable to cope with such haunting. At the exit, we would see Priscilla's body looming from a chest inside an almost walled-up cellar. This dark version would have been a walkthrough with a trapdoor working as elevators to take guests to the show building. The Gores would disappear from the next version, but their spirit would continue to influence the mansion we got to experience. This second version now moved the house from Frontierland and into New Orleans Square. The main attraction was thought of by Ken Anderson, who in the script describes the following experience in what he called Ghost House. You would arrive to an antebellum mansion where you would register your name at a visitor center that worked as a ticket booth. There, magazines and newspapers from the 19th century would have headlines of atrocities committed in the house. You would look up into a window that had a woman being pulled by a hairy hand. Inside the house, Walt's voice would outline the tragic history of the house as follows. Bloodmere is the name of this old house, which was the lakeside estate of the unfortunate Blood family. It was built about 1800 in the swampy bayous near New Orleans, and was moved here intact because it was such a fine example of early architecture from that section of our country. It had not been occupied for some time and was badly in need of repair, so we started the work of restoration as soon as it arrived at Disneyland. But, strangely enough, the work of each day was destroyed during the night, and the night watchman reported that when he had passed the house, he'd heard eerie screams and seen weird lights. Every day, we made a new attempt to repair the house, but in vain. For every morning, the windows were broken, furniture smashed, and the shutters hanging by a single hinge. Later, Walt says they contract a special New Orleans agency, which tells them the house had a history of unlucky owners who died sudden and violent deaths, which resulted in their unhappy ghosts remaining behind. The narration continues to explain carpenters and other personnel disappear within the house. Due to the disappearances, Walt hires an old butler who used to work in the house, and it is him who guides the visitors, since only he knows how to wander through the house without mysteriously disappearing. There is also an explanation as to why it is night inside the attraction while it is day outside of it. The house has rotted for so long in the dark fastness of its lost hiding place, in the swamps, that not even Southern California's sunshine or the best efforts of electricians and illumination engineers can dispel the dimness of the bayous. It mysteriously remains always night within the house, the night in which all ghosts are condemned to live. At the end, it requests visitors to obey the guide's instructions above all, to prevent any danger, since ghosts do whatever they please inside. Once inside the house, the layout was very similar to the Gorse mansion, but with subtle differences. You enter an entry stair hall, with a dark figure shaking the chandelier. But the butler arrives in time to prevent any accidents. You walk through a portrait gallery, where a ghost march was to be played. The gallery would have portraits with eyes that followed guests, while the butler would have narrated the stories of past owners. Then guests would be ushered into the library, where there was a portrait of a mother and a daughter. A butler would tell the story of the daughter's unmade wedding due to a terrible event too horrible to describe, which kills the family and all the guests. A ghost would appear in a mirror above the fireplace and would explain more of the story and even address them by their names. A bookshelf would pop open, revealing a secret passageway that would lead to the gallery, where the ghost of the bride would be chased by another one, and then would appear in the stairs and lose her head. Guests would enter a secret passageway filled with bats and spiders that lead to the bedroom. There, the bolts of lighting coming in through the window would reveal a ghost on a rocking chair, another on a bed, and a third inside a bathtub. The butler would be then kidnapped by Harry the Arm and disappear. Lights would dim, and after a short period of darkness would turn back on. Guests would walk to the next room. The big room, called the salon, would have an enormous window overlooking a family's graveyard. After a wolf howls and the lightning flashes, you see ghosts appear at the graves and rise towards the sky. They then enter the room and float above guests dressed as the wedding guests from the tragic event. Another lightning strikes, and suddenly the headless horseman appears and rides through the graveyard. Finally, another lightning would strike, and from the ceiling, a dead body would fall to the ground, revealing it to be the lost carpenter. The fireplace would open an access, and guests would leave the room through the opening. They would end up in a tower with a transparent ceiling that revealed a man hanging from the rafters. The man is revealed to be the best man. The floor would become transparent and also reveal a giant octopus eating his last victim right beneath us. Lucky for guests, a secret door would open and take them into a mirror passageway with ghostly hands that led to a party room with classic characters such as Frankenstein, Dracula, and even Captain Hook joining in at the fun. Finally, you would end up at a wedding party room, very similar to today's ballroom, where the ceremony would be taking place. The groom would kiss the bride's decapitated head, and then when about to be married, the room would shake and finally collapse on top of all the wedding guests, showing the tragic end they all had, and the tragedy that cursed them all into repeating the event eternally. You would exit through a crypt and into the family's graveyard, where you could find more clues of the tragedy at the epitaphs. A gift shop selling wedding cake and balloons would be the last thing you'd see of the attraction. The attraction has way too many similarities with Phantom Manor. A portrait in the foyer, a tragic wedding, a shadowy figure, a bride, and a family graveyard at the exit. Could Tony Baxter rescue some of these elements to make Phantom Manor? Tell me in the comments. Imagineers tested the attraction of some Zorro sets and discovered the effects needed much more time to restart, making the tour longer and thus lowering capacity. The idea was shelved due to other pressing attractions, and Ken Anderson left the project, leaving it to the hands of Claude Coates, Mark Davis, and Rolly Crump, amongst others. The idea would continue to evolve. But the walkthrough aspect of it really worried Imagineers and had them thinking that a ride vehicle had to be implemented. But without the existence of the Omnimover, which ride vehicle could it be? During the planning of Pirates of the Caribbean, Imagineers already had some plans in motion for the Haunted Mansion. At the time, the Haunted Mansion was supposed to be a walkthrough attraction with 2 identical show buildings with the exact same experience. All this to double the capacity of the walkthrough ride. The facade with the 2 identical elevators was already built, having that in mind. Yet capacity issues kept haunting Imagineers. What if a scared guest made the whole group walk slower? What if a kid vandalized the art? Would tired folks who'd been walking all day at the park want to walk in a house? Soon Imagineers realized they needed a ride vehicle, but the Omnimover didn't exist back then. So the natural vehicle that came to their heads was a boat. They began toying with the idea of entering an oversized, flooded, haunted mansion where guests would float by the ruins of the decadent and half-sunk estate. Some concept art played with the flooded idea of boats looking at rotting second floors about to collapse, similar to the Pirates of the Caribbean burning scene. You would start in a basement, go through crypts, and eventually get into the flooded first floor. In the end though, Walt said there are too many boat rides, even though Small World and Pirates hadn't been constructed yet. The sunken house idea would survive and make it to the 2003 film with a flooded mausoleum and a flooded front yard, Museum of the Weird. Walt gave free rein to Imagineers, and if Claude Coates had a bet for a somber, gothic, dark mansion, Marc Davis had it for a whimsical and pun-filled dark ride. Rolly Crump, on the other hand, wanted a weird and freaky experience, with unsettling and crazy creatures from vampires to candlemans and anthropomorphical furniture mixed with psychedelic colors. Crump created something so unique it gave the mansion a more organic look. The first concept art Marc Davis made for the Portrait Hall, or Grand Hall as it was called then, incorporates the look of the Haunted Mansion as an organism, where ceilings, furniture, gates, and statues have an unsettling anthropomorphical aspects to it, as if the mansion ate its inhabitants and digested them into the wallpaper and furniture. Still, his concept art was so strikingly different to what the other Imagineers were doing, Walt thought these deserved their own attraction. Just as Pirates was to have Blue Bayou, Walt thought the mansion had to have its own attached restaurant and experience. That's when Museum of the Weird was thought of. Located next to the mansion and at the end of New Orleans Square, guests would find a restaurant with a museum incorporating the most bizarre objects and creatures one could think of. Sadly, with Walt's passing, the museum never became an attraction. Still, Crump's work permeated the concept art and made it to the house. Whenever you feel like decoration is more of a creature, that's Crump's work. The gargoyles, the skull wooden panels, the faces on the library's shelves, the gargoyles at the base of the stairs, the anthropomorphical chairs, the cool wallpaper, the grandfather clock, Madame Leota's base, and the crypt's arm torches are part of this Imagineer's legacy. Also, the idea of a house with strange or even magical artifacts working as a museum did eventually became made, albeit watered down and made for children and a Chinese audience. Still, wouldn't it be neat California Adventure had a Mystic Manor ride with the elements and story of Museum of the Weird? Let me know in the comment section. In the end, the mansion benefited from the input of many Imagineers, becoming the attraction we love today, both creepy, funny, and weird. Which iteration of the ride did you like the most? Let me read your comments so we can discuss. Visit our TikTok and Facebook for resources, pictures, and sneak peeks of the videos here at Stories from the Mansion.